Hi everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again. Now it's time for episode 120 of the Album of the Day, in which, today I'm reviewing an album where, I'm getting to it a little bit late. I'm reviewing it a little late because this album actually came out in January, but I didn't really get around to listening to it until July. Decided right now that I did want to review it. It's the new album from one of the most prolific musical figures under the lo-fi, garage rock, and psych rock circuit that really started to boom and and sort of started a cult following in the late 2000s and in the early 2010s. Of course, I'm talking about pretty much, a true titan, heavyweight of garage rock and psych rock and whatnot. The guy I'm talking about is the one and only Ty Segall, who has put out one of the biggest discographies in the course of an 8-year career that he's had. He's got such a huge discography that it makes sense I'm new to the guy, because, if you're new to the guy as well, I wouldn't really envy you either, because there are just so many albums in his discography to listen to. You only really, can listen to so much at a time. But I'm here to review his latest full-length album that came out in 2016, this year, in January, so I'm getting to it a little bit late, but now I'm finally getting around to listening to it. The album is called Emotional Mugger, and as you can see, I have the vinyl copy of this. I recently showed this in my vinyl collection, one of my vinyl collection videos. It was like part 4 or something like that. Recently, as I said, I got this at Music Underground in State College. This is a great record. I wanted to review it because it is certainly one of my favorite garage rock albums of the year. It's a record that I really liked. And anyway, here's the cover. Let me tell you, that is one of the most insane, one of the most sinister album covers we've seen this year, I think. Anyway, there's the back of it. As you can see, I have the vinyl of this. Released on Drag City Records, his longtime, independent record label. And of course, there's the sleeve in there, which has, the liner notes and the track list there. 11 songs on this album, 38 minutes long. And, some more crazy, totally insane artwork. But, Ty Segall's kind of a weird guy, so it makes sense that his artwork would be so strange. Anyway, there's side A. And then there's side B. So yeah, that's my vinyl copy of Emotional Mugger, the new album from Ty Segall. Now, in case you're wondering, I have listened to a little bit of Ty's older material before. I did, not necessarily, before listening to this record, but after listening to the album, I did sort of listen to a little bit of Ty's older stuff, and I would say that he tends to be a little bit of a quantity over quality kind of artist for me. I find that, I just find that the, sort of lo-fi, sort of, fuzzy, recording of some of his music, tends to kind of get in the way of what quality the tunes had to offer, and, but, it makes sense, because there's a lot of lo-fi garage rock that kind of tends to be a little quantity over quality, but I do find some of those kind of artists improving slowly. And Ty is seemingly improving with his production on records. I mean, this album, easily his most lo-fi, most scuzzy, definitely his most ear-slicing production yet. But yet, not in a bad way. Not in a way that's unpleasant to the ears, or not in the way that gets in the way of the tunes themselves. it's actually very crisp and actually very sort of and actually very explosive as well. So it's definitely the perfect balance between distorted and between like distorted and clean production. It's the perfect balance between that because I did hear a lot of people say that his last full-length album, Manipulator, was his most sort of polished album yet in terms of the production. But with this one, he sort of segued back into the more lo-fi stuff, while still sort of creating a balance between distorted and clean, pretty much. The, you know, and so yeah, like I would say that this record is definitely one of Ty's most consistent albums yet, and one of his most twisted albums yet too. He's he doesn't just simply feel like him sort of buying into the bandwagon of lo-fi garage rock. He's really kind of trying to take it, push it to some more sort of strange, some more sort of weird, more sort of really kind of warped boundaries. It's definitely a very kind of hot, kind of sweaty album that I can't help just sweat. So I just can't help sweating a little bit as I'm listening to this album. Anyway, let's just get into a little more description about the tunes themselves, right? So the opening track, Squealer, features these very intoxicating guitar squawks, and there's some drums and the drums syncopated with it, pretty nicely along with the keyboards, as well as there's a really distorted, fuzzed out bass on the track, and as well as kind of these glitchy keyboards coming in and out. And also it features these really sort of zany sort of vocals. I would say Ty's vocal performances have gotten just have gotten a little more sort of insane here on this new album of his. Like I would say his vocals even kind of sound like a little bit like maybe old school Marilyn Manson or something like that. And so, the instrumental on here is really sort of off-kilter, and plus it has pretty awesome guitar solo at the end. It's definitely a great way to open the record, because it's definitely a track that really does, start the album off with some really great energy that, you're sort of like having fun while listening to it, but at the same time also you kind of feel like, whoa, didn't see this coming. Like you almost feel as if you've been drugged or something like that, with the way the guitar kind of squawks and stuff like that. And then the following track, Californian Hills, is like even more of a kind of a twisted sort of track, which is definitely kind of like this sort of odd sort of, garage rock nightmare, pretty much, if you look at just the really strange, and sort of, if you look at just the very sort of harrowing, distorted bass, as well as, just the guitars that really, do have this, as well as these kind of, strange sort of, twisted sort of guitars. And the lyrics on this track are pretty dark. I mean, I wouldn't say the songwriting of this album is amazing, but, but I would admit, there is sort of an esotericness to the lyrics that I think ties in with the record pretty nicely. Californian Hills has lyrics that, I guess sort of, maybe dealing with politics a little bit, like, with lyrics like American Nightmare, Guilty Generation, and, sort of, has some pretty, strange, sort of, dark lyrics, lyrics, and uses some wordplay like the papers say we're going to hell. It's definitely a track that definitely, sort of feels like being dragged into the depths of like lo-fi and garage rock hell. So you're kind of, sort of taken for a hell ride a little bit on this record, but not in a way that's like, but not in a way that's like, you know, but not in a way that's like, super brutal or anything like that. Just in a way that kind of makes you see that, this record would probably sound even more insane if you were drugged while listening to it. I mean, if you were drugged while listening to this record, it probably, it would probably be quite, an intense experience. So yeah, I won't necessarily, talk track by track about this record, but I will sort of go into detail about some of my other favorite tracks in the record. Californian Hills is certainly one of my favorite tracks on this record, but also I really like the song Diversion, which is a cover of a song by the Equals. I haven't really listened to the original version, but Ty's version is definitely way more distorted and just way more noisy, easily the loudest song on the record. It has the guitars and the bass are just distorted as hell, and they sort of bleed into one another to create this just sort of, really sort of, insane sort of, scuzzy wall of sound, like, and the drums on here, but still the drums on here like, still feel very crisp, and they don't feel buried in the mix or anything like that. And then along with the glitchy keyboards and stuff like that, this song, in my opinion, probably has the most Death Grips inspired instrumental on the whole record, in my opinion. It sounds as if he's maybe taking a little inspiration from, Death Grips a little bit. Just my opinion. I don't know about you. And the vocals on here, easily one of the weirdest and just one of the most sort of nutty vocal performances on the whole record. I'm back, I'm back, I'm back, I'm back. Like, Ty is definitely, sort of, singing in this sort of kind of strange, sort of nutty, tongue-in-cheek falsetto for a majority of the tracks on here. But I like how he balances it out and gives it some variety by also incorporating some really sort of freaky, sort of, lower sort of, vocals on a majority of these tracks and stuff like that. So that's why I think the vocals kind of have a Marilyn Manson sort of, flavor to them a little bit. Also, I really like the song, and then also some other great tracks in here include, like, the song Breakfast Eggs is another one of my favorites on this record. Great guitar riffs on that track. It's, it's definitely, and also it's definitely one of the more humorous tracks lyrically. It talks about sort of, this, the character of this record seems to be this really insane guy that, is supposed to be kind of freaky. This song, I guess, sort of talks about this, like, person that obviously he's in love with or something like that, and talking about, since he's in love with this person, he's like, talking about, like, making her favorite breakfast eggs and, and touching her little legs. So it's a little kind of, lyrics on here are a little kind of, strange and, kind of goes so far into absurdity. It's kind of like, but, not in a way that's like cringeworthy or anything like that. That and also has a great chorus with kind of, distorted, guitars on it, and, just some really dramatic vocals, like, candy, I want your candy, but at the same time, it is kind of catchy and stuff like that. And the song Baby Big Man, is one of the weirder tracks on the record, and, I do like the kind of, the how the vocal changes from like sort of, sweet on the ears to like really just odd and insane, as well as it has these weird vocal stylings in the middle of the track that go ah like the track, and also like the song has some pretty, cre and also the song has some, so the song, is driven by guitars and keyboards and stuff like that are pretty distorted and stuff like that. And then also I love the song Candy Sand as well. It's a real foot stomper and has some pretty killer energy to it, like a really killer guitar solo and hook on the track. It's definitely one of the most fun tracks on the album. And it definitely sort of, ties this whole project together, sort of talking about like, how the sort of strange, protagonist of this album, it's definitely another track that really just shows some absurdity in the lyrics. I mean, the lyrics of this album, they are really ridiculous and esoteric, and, I can't really make heads or tails about the lyrics really on this record, but, still that's okay, because I guess that leaves a little more room for the instrumentals to really be what the album is so much about. And then it closes off with the addition of a children's choir. And like the song closes off with the addition of a children's choir, which, actually sounds pretty nice at the end. Most of the time, children's choir can be a little obnoxious, mostly because children don't really know how to sing as well. But really, in the context of just how insane this track is lyrically and musically, it kind of makes sense for Ty to incorporate, a children's choir, and he makes it work on here. So, slow clap for you, Ty. And there, and then also, the song "Emotional Mugger" slash "Leopard Priestess." Not really my favorite song on the record, but still, some pretty good riffs on that track. Mandy Cream's a pretty good song too, although not one of my favorites either. And while the album, for the most part, is pretty distorted and falls into the, and it's like a blend of garage rock, some indie rock, some psych rock, and stuff like that, Ty isn't afraid to mix things up a little bit. Like on the song Squealer 2, where he goes for this really funky instrumental that I really love, with this really sexy bass line on the track, and, as well as some pretty cool drums and kind of glitchy sounds in there in the same time. It is kind of funky, but at the same time, it is kind of still garage rock at heart. It features these really loose, off-kilter vocals, and I would say some of the most off-kilter performances vocally on the whole record occur when Ty has these just sort of cracked yelps at the end of "Squealer man." The end, I just, I just really like the track, mostly because, I like how it mixes things up, and also I do like sort of the off-kilter feel that song has. And then, the closer, the magazine, is probably the closest that Ty comes to this record for a ballad, with these really gorgeous vocal harmonies and, pretty somber bass, drums, and keyboard. But then it has just these really distorted, just, really, kind of destructive guitar solo at the end with some heavy just effects on it that, closes out the song as well. And I do like kind of, and also we do have these pretty, and also we do have some hand claps that syncopate really nicely with the drum. They go like, so those two songs really do show how Ty once in a while can mix things up. So yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of complaints about this album. I would say the one track on here that I think could have been left off the record because I think it was totally unnecessary for it to be put in the track listing is the second to last song, which I'll have to see what the title is. Okay, WUOTWS. That's the one track that could have been left off this record because I feel it really didn't need to be there just because, it's basically just a bunch of weird sounds and, basically it's just a bunch of weird snippets from recording sessions that, didn't need to be on there. Like, I kind of understand why Ty put it there. Maybe it's to tie the album together, but still, if it were left off the record, I wouldn't fret because, really just, because really just, it's kind of, a weird kind of filler moment and not necessarily a great track. So it's definitely my least favorite track on this album, really, and I guess a lot of people that probably have listened to this record would probably think the same thing. But really, other than that, I think this is a pretty cool album. It's a lo-fi, garage rock, and psych rock house of horrors. That's how I would describe it. I know Anthony Fantano did say the same thing in his review, but I would have to agree with him. That's kind of exactly what this album is, from its really strange and kind of creepy album cover to the songs themselves, which are kind of tortured and heavily distorted and have some just really twisted sort of vibes to them that feels like, it would probably feel even more, insane, as I said, if you were on, like, believe me, if you were on acid while listening to this, it would probably be a really insane experience. Experience, probably. And also, I like how this record, it's a lot of fun, mostly because, I like how Ty sort of feels the freedom to, like, experiment here on this record. I mean, I would say, what's the point if, I definitely would say this, what's the point in making a lo-fi garage and psych rock record, or a lo-fi rock album in general, if you're just going to record it like a normal studio record? Why not kind of experiment a little bit and really have some fun with it and really, make and really sort of make it feel like just kind of, sort of, I know it sounds like dicking around, but really, it's really not in the way that Ty does it here on this album here. It's definitely some fun music. Definitely not for the it's definitely not necessarily for everyone. It's free one, but it's definitely some very fun music going on here on this record. The song, and I think it definitely shows Ty's experimental streak, as opposed to some of his older records where I feel like he wasn't really pushing the boundaries enough or something like that, and was just kind of recording some of the more lo-fi garage rock stuff as more like just a normal studio album, while this record really shows him really warping that idea of recording a lo-fi rock album. Sort of breaks a few rules here. I really like this record. I'm gonna give it maybe I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. It's a great record and I highly recommend it. It's been a pretty good year for garage and psych rock, and this album is certainly one of them. King Gizzard's new album is fantastic. Definitely recommend that. I did a review for that. You guys can go check that out. And also, I recently listened to the new OC's album, A Weird Exits, which I thought was fantastic, and hopefully I'll be able to get it on vinyl sometime. And hopefully I'll be able to review that, because I think that's a great record. It recently came out in August. So, August. But, pretty much all started with Emotional Muggers by Ty Segall. So, yeah, that's my review of this new Ty Segall album titled Emotional Mugger. I'll see you for episode 121.